If that's okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Geriatric Medicine Grand Rounds. Before I introduce today's speakers, I have some housekeeping items to review. This CME activity is jointly provided by the Queen's Medical Center and UH Jabsom Department of Geriatric Medicine. As a reminder, evaluations are required for CMEs. You can find the evaluations by following the link in the chat at the end of this talk. Your comments are very important to the planning committee and will be used to plan future programs. All speakers are asked to provide conflicts of interest, and these are disclosed. Today's speaker has no conflict of interest with commercial enterprises. It is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Kunane Dreier is Deputy Director of Programs at the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center and a leader within the LGBTQIA+ community. Kunani has worked in the field for over 20 years, providing HIV and HCV testing and prevention services, smoking cessation, and most recently working with individuals experiencing houselessness. He also provides capacity building and training with a focus of harm reduction throughout Hawaii and the Pacific Islands, as well as strategic leadership and oversight for the agency's community-based programs. He's responsible for managing client outreach initiatives and leading the development, implementation, and continuous improvement of agency-wide training programs and capacity building, both locally and nationally. He's a member for the Hawaii Advisory Commission on Drug Abuse and Controlled Substances and co-chair of the Hawaii HIV Community Planning Group. He's a graduate of the University of Hawaii at West Oahu with a bachelor's in public administration and is a recipient of the 2023 Circle of Harmony Award, recognizing 20 years of HIV prevention work. Please join me in welcoming Kunane Dreier.
Hi, aloha everyone. My name's Kunane Dreier. I use he, him, oya pronouns. And that's my nice little bio. I'm a lifetime member of the community. I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, white, and I identify as Mahu. So just a little bit of that. And so that's kind of where my experience also lies, also very personal to me when we talk about our community. And knowing our place is very important for us as individuals of the community. And I'm so grateful to be here with you folks today as you continue to work with our community. I think it's so important for us to a little bit better understanding of who we are as a community. Okay. So I work at Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. I'm hoping you folks have heard of us. If not, www.hhhrc.org. You can learn all kinds of things about us. We are the merged entities of the Life Foundation and the Child Project. So time is of the essence, so I'm not going to go through all our slides word by word, that kind of thing, but you can learn a lot more about our agency there. We do like to say we're at the intersection of criminal justice, HIV and Hep C care and prevention, mental health, substance use, and houselessness. So many of our people come in for one thing, and the more we talk story with them, and I'm sure you folks all know this, the more we discover the support that they may need. Okay. Let's just jump in, and you folks can throw your answers into the chat box. But here's a scenario. A kapuna responds to a pronoun question by saying, "What you mean? What are my pronouns? Can't you tell I'm a girl?" What should the provider do? And you can throw your responses, A, B, C, D, multiple choice, right into the chat. I see a few coming up. C, A, C, A, C. Oh, we're going back and forth, right? Okay, I love this. C-A, back and forth, right? Explain why everyone should share pronouns. But C, Respect her answer and continue using the gender she has expressed. So in this case, and here's the response that the scenarios have all come from actual people who are kupuna, who we talk story with, right? Michaela and Dr. David Stupplebean talked story and interviewed many kupuna on our island. And these are the responses, and this is where the scenarios have come together, right? But participant number 19, right, we'll just call her Auntie, says, I don't put no labels on myself. It says, and she says, I identify as human being, right? But she says, I grew up Mahu, I'm Mahu, and that's it, right? And so, although she wasn't very specific here, saying she's a girl, she presents as a girl, as female, so we would just move forward through our interaction with her using feminine pronouns, right? She, her pronouns. Not everybody would need the explanation around why we use pronouns, but it is sometimes a conversation that is needed, right? So respect first, terminology second. Okay. So I'm just curious now, this might be a good moment if you folks could use the raise your hand feature. How many of you know, or maybe have worked with somebody who is from who identify as transgender or maybe identifies as Mahu? Okay. I see some hands coming up. So that's exciting. We've got 12, 11 hands so far out of everybody in the room, out of the 35. So this is my question to you folks, and especially the people who haven't raised your hands. How do you know, right? That's the biggest question, is how do you know that somebody is transgender or not, or cisgender, right? Sometimes, right, we just make assumptions. But not everybody who presents in life, you can just clock their T, I like to say in our world, right? Where you can tell that they're transgender or they might be Mahu, right? Identity is very personal to many people, and the might be walking through this world as stealth as can be, where you don't know. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this really means, and then how do you find out if you need to know. That's the next question, right? Do you need to know? Is it pertinent to the care that this person is coming in to see you for? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about culture. We're going to talk about a little history and Mahu and the very, very specific difference between a cultural identity, this cultural identity of being Mahu. And when you think about Western culture and Western labels of LGBTQIA+, two very different things, right? And if time permits, we're going to talk a little bit about how do you better provide services. Okay. Objectives, I believe they were sent out when you signed up. Hopefully you got them, but deeper understanding of Mahu, LGBTQI in the Western view, and then how do you better support your people coming in? Tell me if I talk too quickly now. Here's the disclaimer. I'm not here to recruit. I tell everybody I'm not here to recruit. We are here to give you a little bit more insight and understanding into our LGBTQIA plus community, especially our Mahu community or transgender community, as it's connected to the work that Dr. David and Michaela have been doing. But yeah, again, but just a better understanding of who our community is, should someone be sitting in front of you that is from the community. Okay. All right. Here's another scenario. We have a few of them tucked in there throughout this training. So a kupuna describes helping younger generation and appreciating life more as they age. What theme of aging is demonstrated in this scenario? Oh, Michaela, this is a little bit different. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, I see a lot of C's coming up. Oh, yes. So C, right? Generative and community responsibility. Very correct. Oh, there. Right. So some of the things that our people, our kupuna shared with David and Michaela, right? What makes me happy now is that I'm able to make a difference, right? How to share some of this information, right? For any of our young, any girls that are similar like me, any transgender woman or mahuahine, right? Still grateful for waking up as we age in life, that we're still able to do that, and then we're able to share our experiences with the younger. And you know what, I'm going to say this because I'm now 60, and as mahu, I talk to young people and share my experiences, right? We share our experiences in life so that people, so that especially the younger ones, can have a better understanding of what it was like, a better understanding of where that they can use as they move forward in their own journeys in life, that kind of thing. But we want to make sure that aging brings strength and that we're able to share that strength with others in the community. And even people who are not from our community, like today with all of you, right? We can sit around. I tell everybody, if you can sit with a kupuna and listen to the stories, do it. They are stories, a wealth of knowledge, right? And it can also give insight into who they are as a person and their experiences, especially when it comes to medical care or any kind of care or support that's being provided by you. Okay. So let's talk quickly about culture and cultural diversity. But you know, when you think of culture, culture is this little set of practices, our values, our beliefs, our rituals. How do we interact with other people? And you know, culture changes, it shifts, right? Here in your office, you're going to have culture. There's a culture of how things function, how you work, how you do interact with people, um, within your practice, at Queens, wherever that may be, right? In your job. And then you go home to your families. There's a culture within your house, within your family, how things function, how things operate. You go out into your social world. There's a culture of how things function, how things operate. And we shift with that culture depending on where we are, right? And even within these settings, culture can change. But that's what culture is. So within a community, right, there is culture, right? And I we used to call this training culture competency. And you know, I'm sorry, but 1 hour with me talking to you folks doesn't make you culturally competent within the LGBTQIA plus Mohu community in any way. It doesn't make me culturally competent because, you know, I'm 60. The young Mohus, the young gays, the young LGBTQ function different. There's a whole culture there that I'm not familiar with. But if we could have cultural humility, that's our new terminology, right? If we can examine our own personal journeys and then try to get a deeper understanding of the person we're talking with, speaking with, working with, and we can honor that, that's having cultural humility. And that's the key point here. And then just to remember intersectionality, everybody shows up different experiences, different, you know, age, race, gender, all of these different things impact who we are as people. Yeah, how am I doing on time? I'm doing pretty good. I talk fast. All righty, everybody. Culture and history. So let's talk a little bit about Hawaii. And we're going to talk a little bit about Mahu, right? So in Hawaii, right, Ohana family, this is a picture I like to show. We brought together 110 LGBTQ Mahu from across the islands and the Pacific on a Friday afternoon, and we spent the weekend together at a retreat looking at all different things, you know, we had different sessions around health, around culture, around the different things that impact our lives as LGBTQ at Mahu. And most people didn't know each other when they showed up at the retreat. But by the time we left on Sunday, everybody was connected. We had all connected because of our own personal journey. So in Hawaii, especially with Mahu, or if you think about our LGBT community, it is sometimes you might hear chosen family, and things like that. And we're going to talk a little bit about why this is important a little bit down the line. Okay. So you might also start hearing this term cutie pie. So queer and trans Pacific Islanders, right? The indigenous identities of being Mahu, if you're from someone, right? Fa'afafine, Fakaleti, all these different identities within our Pacific Islanders. Indigenous identities, we don't always connect to the Western labels of gender identity and sexual orientation, right? The LGBTQIA+, right? So MVP FAF is our LGBTQIA+ of our community, Pacific Islander community. And then cutie pie, you may see in research. For those of you who enjoy research, we are seeing the terminology cutie pie in more research that's coming out when they're looking at our community. Right? So in cutie pie, indigenous identities, they varied by ethnic group, erased by the adoption of Western and colonization because of things such like religion, right? That kind of thing. Homophobia, transphobia, those are all products of colonization. They are not something that we dealt with or had to deal with or experience as Native people, indigenous people in our cultural world prior to colonization. That's my soapbox, everybody. So this is Dr. Felicia Brown Action. And when she was doing her PhD, her dissertation and her studies and everything, she did research into our LGBT at that when she originally started LGBTQIA+ communities. The more work she did and the more research she did, she found that we didn't connect with those identities. Right? And that each of our cultures has an identity. Mahu, Vakasaleva Leva, Palopa, Fa'afine. Wherever you went within the Pacific Islands, there was an identity of this person who lived in the middle of these two energies, right? Masculine and feminine energies. And so she coined this term MVP FAF. So that's our LGBTQI, but from the cultural lens. Right? So when we think about these identities, right, you have traditionally, if you look at Western culture, right, kane, wahine, male, female. Somewhere in the middle is who we have the identity of Mahu. The person who lives between both the masculine and feminine energy. Mahu has nothing to do with who I want to sleep with. In any way, form, or fashion, has nothing to do with who I want to sleep with. Mahu doesn't mean I want to go have gender affirming care surgeries and procedures to change the way I physically look in that sense so I can be stealth in that way. No. Mahu is someone who lives between the two energies, right? So when we think about in our culture, what does that really mean, right? Noho or moi aikane is this is kind of, aikane is when you have a same gender relationship, right? Male, male, female, female, and it can be platonic. So, right, our aikane, our royalty had aikane, the person who's going to be almost like the office executive assistant for the king or the queen, right? Or you could have moi aikane, moi to sleep with, right? So someone who they enjoyed themselves with, right? So it could be either platonic or it could be an intimate relationship, same gender. And that was like the terminology for aikane. And both the king and the queen's royalty had aikane. And then mahu is somebody who lives in the middle. The thing that troubles us when we talk about mahu, just like when we talk about any concept that's native or indigenous, and we're trying to explain this to someone who is Western or only speaks English and doesn't have the deeper thought to see and feel what something may mean from a cultural lens, right? We gets lost in translation. So when we talk about mahu, these definitions that are on the screen come from our own Native Hawaiian dictionaries, but they are written in a way that we want to define and explain this word mahu to someone who is not Hawaiian. So it gets lost in translation. So even though these are here, don't use them, because this is what's written to appease the foreigner, to appease the colonizer. It wasn't written because of who we really are, because it's hard to explain this concept of mahu to someone who has no cultural experience, right? But when we talk about mahu, it's someone who lives in between. History of mahu. This is going dating far back, right? Kathy Kapua, who used to work here with me, did some research and found this journal, right? And this is an example of how the mahu became something bad. Let me just say that. But we found in 1838, this reverend wrote a little journal entry about his experience coming across or interacting with someone who is mahu, right? So he writes this long little thing, right? Someone who is never dressed in male costume, right? I told him if he would be a follower of Jesus, he must make no reserve, but willing to sacrifice everything. That the person had a hard conflict with his pride, must be willing to do anything, right? This is when we as mahu were being written and being told that we were wrong, that we weren't supposed to be part of our Native Hawaiian society, our Hawaiian culture, right? That we are not supposed to be, because some outside foreign person came into our world and said we were wrong. They brought their beliefs, their cultural practices into our world and told us we were wrong. Right? But when we think about mahu and who we really are in Hawaii, it's a cultural term. It means to be privileged, to have the mana, the energy of both kane, wahine, of male and female, right? That we have both and we can go back and forth and turn it on. We channel the energy that is needed for the task in front of us, right? Part of society, respected. We are caretakers, healers, teachers. We passed on the knowledge. We were the gatherers and the keepers of the knowledge from one generation to the next, right? Very respected in the community as part of the society, right? We are rooted in indigenous Kanaka or Iwi knowledge systems, right? Served a specific communal and familial purpose. We had a role. We had responsibilities, right? The role of the mahu extends beyond just the gender identity, right? Our moku o hau, right? Where did we come from in the lineage of our family, of our community, of our society, right? Tied to kuleana, right? Responsibility that culturally, spiritually, and physically contributed to the family, to the society, right? Mahu is not the Hawaiian term for non-binary or transgender. And that's what it has kind of evolved with over the year. I mean, you saw that in the definitions that we even find in our own Hawaiian dictionaries, right? But over the years, trying to explain mahu to a foreigner, it is now people have understand, oh, every transgender person is that, oh, that's a mahu. That's not the case, right? It's not the case, right? Knowing our place. What is our role? Kulana, and what is our kuleana, our responsibility? And this goes beyond just people who identify who are mahu. In Hawaiian society, everybody knew what their role was. And once you knew your role within the community, within your family, you knew what your responsibilities were, right? And then you stayed in your lane. You did what you were supposed to do to take care of everything that needed to be taken care of and to make sure that everybody lived harmoniously. Mahu is a cultural term. You know, mahu used to be very negative. I grew up in the 70s or 80s. I heard the word mahu. That means, and I went to Kahuku school. Okay, I lived in the rough and tough neighborhood. And if needed, I heard the word mahu, that means I was going to have to fight, right? So it's very negative. And so we didn't like the word mahu for a long time. But over the last, I'd say 20 years, we have reclaimed the word. Sometimes you might hear mahu wahine or mahu kane. That's somebody who is more comfortable adding the identity piece, the gender piece to the word, to let people know who they are. Again, if you're talking to somebody who is kupuna in that age bracket, bring up the glades, honey, and you're going to hear lots of stories. But this is our stone wall. And the glades itself, that's a whole nother session that could take us the whole hour. So I'm going to skip over this. But just bring up the glades and they'll tell you. We love the glades. Okay. Okay, here. This is the key piece, ohana. Right? We have our biological, we also have our Hanai family. So if you're working with somebody who's Mahu, somebody who's transgender, even our LGBT, our LGB, right? And you might be working with somebody and they're going to say, oh, I'm going to bring my mom in, or my auntie's coming to, with me to accompany me, and to be here, my support system, right? When we talk about support systems, it might not be someone who's from their biological family. It might be from their ohana, from their Hanai family, right? Because some of us, you might hear the term drag mom, or you might just say, I'm bringing my mom, and here comes another beautiful transgender woman or mahu, that is the person who is giving or provides that family support, and the lineage to who this person may be that you're working with, right? Or if you're working with an older person, they're going to say, my niece is coming or my nephew is coming. They might not be blood related in any way, but that's all part of family and the connection. So it's important to know where the support system is coming from, and just know they might not always be biological family. And there's many reasons that a lot of us don't have our biological family as a support system. Okay. All right, here is another scenario for everybody. A resident identifies a lifelong friend as family, and staff asks for the person's real family. How should the provider respond? A, B, C, or D? I see a lot of B's. Yes, I love that. Very good, everybody. B, right? Family may include Hanai family, chosen family, and community relationships, right? Here again, a participant within the study with Dr. David and Michaela, a quote that someone shared with us, but here, especially like my generation and older, when we were younger, we had chosen families. I mean, they still have them now, but back then, that's all we had, our chosen family. We've come a very long way. From where we were a long time ago. But I just want you to know that I continue to see younger and younger people having being kind of cut off from their family because of their identity of being transgender or mahu, or LGBT. And so, knowing this and being supportive of who the family member is wonderful. So all kudos to all the B's that came up. Okay. Again, when we talk about this, the biological family may not always understand or agree with the person's choices in their life journey, right? Sometimes they don't know how to give guidance to be, how do I support? How do I talk about transition? How do I talk to my son about buying a bra? Right? That comes up often. Things like that. So family sometimes doesn't know how, right? And then sometimes they also have to go through the grieving process, especially for someone who is mahu or transgender, right? So the Hanai family, or the person in this role of mom or dad or whatever that may be, right, has a better understanding of the journey, right? Provides better support with some of the issues that they may experience. Sometimes they provide support to the family, the biological family, and things like that. But just know that when we talk about our chosen family, they are filling in the gaps and the need where you for someone who for the pieces that are missing that they no longer get from their that are no longer available to them through their biological family. Okay. Any questions really quick about Mahu culture, Native Hawaiian, in this cultural lens before I move on and try to catch my breath? Okay. No questions just means you think I'm fabulous. All righty. So here we go. LGBTQIA plus, LGBTQIAAP, right? We keep getting more and more. We call it the alphabet mafia. You might hear me say LGBTQIA, right? These are labels and definitions that our Western people have put upon our community. It is mostly, I like to say, for data collection purposes, things like that, right? They want to know who I want to sleep with, right? And am I a boy or a girl? These are really the questions, right, that they're trying to figure out. And then based on what we tell them, they want to tell us we're wrong. Anyway. So again, definitions, labels from a Western lens to describe somebody, right? So gender identity, gender expression, gender assigned at birth, physically, emotionally, who do we love, right? This is the gender unicorn. I'm not going to go through it all, but the one thing I try to tell everybody is one is not, doesn't determine the other, right? I know plenty boys who are almost as feminine as me, but are straight, that kind of thing, right? Things just don't, one does not define the other. One thing I do want to say is gender expression will change, can be also fluctuate. And the example I like to tell everybody, you have me here at 10 a.m. and you're going to get a little bit more of a subdued me. Yes, you could still tell I'm Mahu, but just a little bit more subdued, a little quiet. But if you're in my house or in my patio with me at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, it's quite different, right? So expression can change based on who's around or the setting. Yeah. When we think of gender non-binary, it's also an umbrella term for someone who's not going to live within these boxes. And this applies to when we think about our transgender community, right? This larger umbrella. You have the binary umbrella where there is a goal for the person, for that individual. They're either trans masculine, trans feminine, and there's a goal. They identify as male or female. They're good with their own personal identities, right? But there's kind of an end goal for them on the binary. Now, what I want to say here is that not every transgender person who's on the binary, right, trans masculine or trans feminine, all has the same end goal as far as gender affirming care or gender affirming procedures. They have an end goal for them, and they're happy, and they're at that place where they identify as male or female, binary. Non-binary are the community who lives in between, that goes back and forth, right? Androgynous, gender fluid, you hear gender queer, these various identities that they may hold on to. They present differently, possibly every day, right? Sometimes you can't tell male or female, right? They're androgynous, that kind of, that type of situation where you're not sure, right? So just know these identities fall under the bigger umbrella of being transgender. Western. Also, all of this is a Western concept. Relationships. This is important to know, right? Someone who might be female to male, male to female, male or female, right? Identities can be in a relationship with any of these identities. How they define that relationship is theirs. Growing up, I was always told that if there was a guy dating a Mahu or a transgender girl, they defined the guy as being gay because he was in a relationship with a transgender individual or a Mahu. However, it was a male dating a female, right? Someone who identified as female. They defined their relationship as heterosexual. That is theirs to define. It is not up to us, again, to put labels on people based on what we feel or believe. So just know, so again, right, somebody might be sitting there and say, my husband is coming, right? And maybe, then, and that's who the person is, and that's who we want to honor, right? Based on what we're told by the individual. Okay. Oh, I'm doing good. 10 minutes to get through providing services. So we have question and answer. Providing services. Here's some of the things our own. Now, this is our community. This is my community talk. Our own issues that we hold when it comes to accessing service, right? Stigma and shame. There's a lot of stigma and shame from inside and outside of our community. We don't want to go looking for services, or we don't want to just move forward because we have to share who we are, right? And some of our innermost secrets when we talk about that. So there's stigma and shame within our own community, within our own selves that we hold. Not at my dining room table. It's okay for you to have the friend who is Mahu or the friend who's LGBTQIA+. Just don't let it be my own child, right? Growing up, I lived with a family 5 nights a week. The daughter was my best friend. We slept in the same bed. The family, the parents loved me like I was their own kid. When her younger brother came out of the closet and shared with the family that he was gay, the family disowned him. I couldn't understand how they could love and embrace me so much and had such a big issue with their own child. One is, over the years, they had gone from to become a very religious family. So that the religious impacts and that is what contributed to the point where he moved away from Oahu to be with his partner and things like that. And it's not an uncommon story. It really isn't. It's okay to have the friend who's Mahu. Just don't let it be my own kid. Yeah. I'm happy to say that has changed, right? With my friend's family. So, culture. Sometimes we can't talk about who we are, depending on the culture we come from, right? We don't even know that services exist. We don't even know that if I go to Queens, I'm going to be treated so wonderfully by these wonderful providers that are here in the Hollywood squares, right? That kind of thing. We don't know that we're putting ourselves at risk for something. Yeah. Substance use, intimate partner violence, and suicide are all high within our community at higher rates than our cisgender heterosexual counterparts. We have higher rates of substance use, intimate partner violence, and suicide. And for many of us, we just don't have family support sometimes. So barriers, right? We don't want to go in and see you folks because we're afraid we're going to be judged, because we're Mohu, because we're LGBTQIA+, right? That we're not going to be understood who we are, right? Not respected for who we are. That I deserved it, right? If you weren't out doing sex work at 2 a.m., you wouldn't have gotten beaten up, right? Things like that. I deserved it. If I wasn't who I was, I wouldn't be in the situation I am. Right? Not being addressed as they present. My English name is Richard. If you see me on the street, don't call me Richard. I won't respond. I just don't pick up on it. But I'm using Richard as an example. But I live my life as Rachel. But you keep calling me Richard. You keep saying he, but I'm all dollied up. I'm all pretty, right? We're not being addressed as we present. Disrespectful. Myth that every young transgender person is going to be a sex worker or a showgirl, or that every young gay boy is looking for a sugar daddy. Not at all true, right? The myths of our community, that we're all using substances, things like that. Sometimes limited access, uninsured, we don't have the money, things like that, right? Guilt by association. If I go to H3RC, people are going to think I'm living with HIV, or they're going to think I'm getting an HIV test because I did something I wasn't supposed to, right? Guilt by association, that kind of thing. Lack of training on our community. So thank you all for being here. Okay, another scenario. A kupuna says she trusts her longtime doctor but worries about future nursing home care. What is true about this interaction? Oh, I see all the C's coming up. And that's so true. Trust exists with the current providers, but concerns remain about future care settings. Yeah. And this has come up. We've had a few experiences, but especially with our Mahu Kupuna, getting into a care home has been challenging. For whatever reason, people don't want to take our Mahu Kupuna because of prejudice. Let them move in. Your house going, your care home going to be fabulous. I promise. Let us move in. Okay. So here, right? Because the doctors that they deal with, they specifically have been dealing with them for a while, so it's positive, right? They understand who we are, and they don't want to switch because, especially if you're Mahu and you get older and you have a doctor that's very understanding and very accepting and very open, it's kind of hard when they retire, right? When we got to look for new young doctors. Yeah. The doctors retire, the doctor passes away and stuff like that. So it gets hard to look for a new doctor. And that's not even, you don't even have to be Mahu. My mom lived to be 94. I begged her for the last 10 years of her life to switch doctors to make it easier to get care because we lived in Haula and her doctor was in town. And getting to Honolulu was hard for her at that age. She refused. Her doctor had to retire because he also aged out for her to say, okay, let's go look, right? People don't want to change their set. Okay, here's some tips on how to providing some service. Provide a safe space. Make it okay for us to tell you our stories. Make it okay for us to tell you who we are. Make it okay for us to say, yes, this is what I do, and not feel judged, right? Address by their chosen name and gender and pronouns. Here's the deal. Rachel comes in to see you. Rachel still has Richard on her ID and her medical insurance card. Rachel doesn't care what's in your medical record. Put Richard. Fine and dandy for billing, whatever you need to do, you can have Richard down, right? The legal things. But as long as you still call me Rachel, I'm happy. The relationship is good. That name and pronoun is the thing that will make or break your relationship. There's a place in your medical record or your file somewhere to put Rachel, use Rachel. It's a beautiful world, right? Standardize your question. Ask everybody every question so there's no stigma. Don't ask Rachel only questions that you think Rachel might be at risk for. You should be asking Richard the exact same questions. And when you say I ask everybody every question, it takes the stigma right out of the conversation about answering questions, right? We use slang. Just know we talk mahu. When I say I went out pooching last night, I wasn't walking my dog. Pooching is the word for sex work. If you don't understand what I'm saying to you, just say, oh, what does that mean when you say you went out pooching last night, right? You don't have to talk mahu to us, but understand. You just got to understand, right? What are their needs and focus on the client's needs, not their identity or sexual orientation. We have horror stories of, especially our transgender women, going in for a chest code, but they want to know what's happening with the gender affirming care, like what procedures they have had. They want to see. If it doesn't pertain, don't ask. It's none of your business, that kind of thing, right? If you have an LGBT or a Mohu person on your staff, we can lift them out. We'll talk story with them, right? Respect confidentiality, diversity in your referrals. Here's the thing with referrals. If you're going to refer me, I'm just going to use names that if Michelle is going to refer me to Alyssa, Michelle better know when I go see Alyssa that Alyssa's going to treat me as wonderfully as she does. Otherwise, I'm going to be mad because Alyssa was mean to me. And then I'm going to be mad at Michelle because Michelle told me go see Alyssa. Sorry, you two, you're just in my eyesight in the Hollywood squares, right? So just know the person you're sending us to is going to be nice because it's so hard for us to walk through some of these things, right? Be culturally sensitive, listen, manage your discomfort when we talk about things, right? If it makes you uncomfortable, smile and nod to keep going and manage your discomfort after. You can be good, right? Be client-centered and check your privilege. And what I mean by this is what's easy for you to do may be hard for Rachel to do because every time Rachel walks into somewhere, she has to pull out her ID that says Richard, and then she has to explain. So something as easy as walking into, I don't know, get your ID or pick up your medication, something like that, can be a challenge for some people. So just check your privilege. Okay, asking the correct questions if you want to know. Sex at birth, two-part question to the current gender. You can see if someone is transgender, right? If the two answers aren't aligned, right? When you ask questions, be not so stigmatizing, right? What do you enjoy? When we do sexual health screenings, right? Tell me what you enjoy with your partners, right? How do you make the question not so, what are you doing when you go home with these people, that kind of thing, right? And then do you really need to know, or are you just being mahoi? Okay. Let's name it. The birth name, legal name, dead naming, right? Birth name and legal name is what's on our ID. Dead naming is when you continue to call Rachel Richard, right? Our preferred name, chosen name, what we want, what we go by, what we use. And then names are fluid. But here's the thing, just remember, people, like, you call somebody Bubba with no challenge. No, when I come in and say, my name is Bubba, I'm sure Bubba's not on the birth certificate, right? But it's no issue, right? Because people are kind of align names with the gender. But when Richard is saying I go by Rachel, all of a sudden it becomes an issue. Don't make it an issue. Pronouns, he, him, she, her. There's some other pronouns on here, like the her, the HIR, Z. Those, if it's a pronoun, if somebody says I use this pronoun and you don't understand or never heard of it, just assume, you can assume that it's gender neutral, right? And if you don't know, you just ask, right? My name's Kunane, I use he, him pronouns. What's your name and what pronouns do you use? Right? And when we think of our Hawaiian culture, right? He, him, oi, oya, kona, kana, these are all our pronouns. They are gender neutral. They have nothing to do with the sex of the person. They are just referring to the person in the conversation, whether it's male, female, mahu. No gender attached to our pronouns. We were ahead of the game than the colonizers came, right? Everyone should be using, we make it a safe space. Give yourself grace if you misgender somebody. And I tell you, oh no, my name's Rachel, I use she, her pronouns. And you say, oh, I'm so sorry. Don't make a big deal about it, because that just kind of brings the light on it, right? Draws heat when you make a big deal. Just say, I'm so sorry, Rachel. And then going forward, you use she, her pronouns. I promise you, we give you grace when you misgender us. And it's okay. Just go on with it. Go on with moving forward. Always people first language. Hopefully you folks have heard of this, so I'm going to skip. If you have policies in place, because I know Queens, many departments, so if there's a policy in place, when I go to see whichever department or unit or wherever I may go, whatever doctor I may see or staff person within there, if there's a policy system-wide, it works amazing. There's
Stop
all
it.
kinds of resources, and there we go. Last statement. Which statement best reflects a strengths-based view of aging? Oh, I'll go back, Jeanette. I see your comment. C, yes, I love all the C's, right? Older adults possess knowledge and resilience that benefit future generations. Talk story with them. Okay, I'll go back real quick to our people first language. People first language, when we're talking about somebody, where the person is who we're referring to, right? So someone who's living with HIV, it's about the person, and then the rest, everything else is kind of, I like to say, action. Person experiencing houselessness, or someone who is unsheltered, person who uses substance, right? Someone who engages in sex work, someone who's from the LGBT community, right? Person first language talks about the person, and then everything else is extra, right? That kind of thing. Versus saying druggy, that's a very negative type thing. Okay, resources. Oh, here, if you folks have anybody who's especially transgender, refer them to us, to our Kuana project. That's our transgender social service program for and run by the transgender community. Here, we did this. Getting old now is kind of like a blessing because I really never thought I would live past 30, and I'm now past 60, right? A lot of my friends never reach and didn't make it this far. Words from our kupuna. Okay. Questions. We're at 120, so we have questions. I'm sorry. I think there was one more scenario, Michaela. We're going to just kind of maybe open it up for questions from our lovely Hollywood squares.
Thank you so much, Kunane, for a very informative presentation. If our audience has questions, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question now. Do we have any questions from our audience?
Oh, yes.
Jake, would you mind unmuting yourself?
No, I was just going to say, if you get a chance to see either of the short films from the recent Rainbow Film Festival, The Rogers on the Samoan trans population, and Mahu, which is actually a hula created by Patrick Kumukuakane, and the story of several people from Hawaii. They were brilliant short films.
Yes, yes. And, you know, they talk about the Fa'afine and Fa'atama, the male, the masculine identities there in Samoa, and their journey, and even the challenges between the two identities. Yeah. Thank you for that. That was this past Saturday night, and I couldn't go. I was so mad.
Thank you, Jake. Do we have any other questions for our speaker or any comments? We have a couple more minutes. I see that Michaela has put the evaluation link into the chat box. So remember, everyone, if you need CME credits, you do need to do the evaluations. And even if you don't, we would appreciate you doing the evaluation form. We still have time for a couple of questions or comments if anybody would like to ask.
I believe Jeanette has a question. She has her hand raised.
Jeanette, please go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kunane. That was great. Could you help me with letters? So I'm older. I come from the gay community of San Francisco, so I try and learn letters. So I noticed you use LGB&T versus LGBTQIA plus in that scenario. So help me figure out the differences.
Yes. So LGBTQIA plus is kind of the current terminology that's out there. My age, I just turned 60, and I come from the old school, and it's always so it's LGB&T for me. I'm so used to, that's what I say. I am inclusive of all, however, sometimes you can't teach an old girl new tricks. And so I still use sometimes LGB&T. But yes, so it's also more predominantly in today's world, LGBTQIA+. But you even have like Two-Spirit, you have all these different terminology. So sometimes it depends on the audience who you're speaking with, what you might use. I've been trying to pivot to LGBTQIA plus or legitimate qua, but it does, yes. So it's sometimes an age thing, generational thing, right? Generation you come from, right? Back then there was only the 4 LGB&T actually. Yeah. And the T got put in with the LGB, right? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender got put in there because they didn't know where to put the transgender community. Because again, being transgender still doesn't have anything to do with sexual orientation. It's gender identity. So when we move to, maybe I can stop share. When we move to the, when we talk, they just kind of balled transgender up with us in that sense. So that's how you got LGB. And so I like to say LGB and T because it's different in the sense of its gender identity versus sexual orientation. I hope that helped, Jeanette. Thank you. My age shows sometimes.
Thank you, Kunane. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll give it another minute, but if not, then Kunani, thank you so much for a very informative presentation. We really appreciate you taking your time to share your expertise with us. And for the rest of our audience, we look forward to seeing you at next month's Grand Rounds in August. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget to do the evaluations, okay?